If anybody remembers the early months of 2018, we were kind of surprised by Black Panther's success.
It's more than pretty entertaining, it's pretty kick-ass.
I really like this movie.
A really, really great film for me. Dollars making money over the weekend, like all of this is insane. We haven't seen anything like this.
I have to commend Black Panther because it stands out as a superhero film where I'm not thinking the most about all of the superhero stuff. I'm thinking about the character.
The critics loved it, the audience loved it. The film just went on breaking record after record at the box office. But what did I think about Black Panther? Well, I thought it was okay. Despite admiring Ryan Coogler's previous films, I quite didn't understand the critical praise for his latest effort. So I was glad when I found others who had alternative views on the film. Only that, they didn't seem to judge the film based on its merits, but by some agenda.
Boy, try being a white person making that movie. Have a fun day.
A bunch of white executives at Marvel greenlit a film about black people in a fictional country in Africa.
You can imagine how the two white British actors in the movie, about black politics and the black ethno-state, felt about all of this.
The Black Panther movie is a piece of shit. I haven't actually seen it, but we now apparently live in a world where the quality of a movie is determined before it's even released, solely on the basis of how woke it is.
As if conservative political commentators overanalyzing a Hollywood film wasn't weird enough, we had a campaign of fake posts about white people being assaulted by black folks when going to watch Black Panther. I wonder if all this have something in common. Nah, maybe I'm just overthinking. Well, despite all the weird hatred Black Panther got, its success continued to rise. The film ended up being 2018's highest grossing film in the US. As Avengers Infinity War came out, people slowly forgot about the Wakandan hero. And its critics, they moved on and focused their rage on things like feminism and Gillette adverts.
The Women's March has now been revealed for what it is, which was an intersectional scam.
Gillette is merely exploiting a tried and tested method of marketing. Free advertising via virtue signal.
Black men sexually assaulting or raping white women is horrendously, it's occurring at horrendous numbers.
So it all ended well and everybody rested easy. Until...
Finally, here are the films selected as Best Picture nominees. Black Panther, Kevin Feige, producer.
Well, isn't that a pleasant surprise? A film based on a comic book superhero got a nomination for Best Picture. Pleasant surprise indeed, right guys? I forgot how the YouTube community worked. Instead of appreciating the success of an MCU film being nominated for Best Picture, a large proportion of the YouTube community just lost their marbles over it.
It's the first superhero film to be nominated for Best Picture, and it's probably one of the worst films to get nominated for Best Picture.
I do not want it to get nominated. It is not a very good film.
And it has absolutely nothing to do with the best movies. It has nothing to do with the most talented people or the best accomplishments. It has to do with one thing and one thing only: identity politics.
This is 110% pandering to black people.
It's as if those guys triggered at Black Panther earlier last year, woke up, saw the news and went... It triggered them so much, they went around carrying the narrative that the Oscar was trying to be woke or that they were politically motivated. No doubt, the Oscars do tend to resist the rage of the right wing and tends to go for more inclusive films. And when they fail to be as inclusive as they want to be, they tend to overcompensate the following years. But there's a massive flaw to that argument. If the Oscars were so desperate to please the black demographic or honor a so-called black film, then they could have given that honor to other films. They've already nominated the amusing yet enlightening Black Klansman, so they pretty much filled up their black film quota. Maybe they wanted to include another black film. But if that was the case, then they had an abundance of other such films to nominate. Films that were more suited for award shows. This leads to the most realistic speculation for Black Panther's nomination, that it wasn't politically motivated, but commercially motivated. The nomination of Ryan Coogler's film got a lot of YouTubers talking about the Oscars. In effect, this turned out to be a smart marketing move by the Academy. However, if they really wanted to bring attention to themselves by nominating a popular film, then why not nominate the more popular and the more globally successful Avengers: Infinity War. In fact, one of the most common criticism of Black Panther's nomination was that Infinity War got shafted in favor of Black Panther. Now, I understand where the argument comes from emotionally, but logically thinking, it's a flawed argument. First of all, let me tell you about my position on the two films. I had a lot more fun watching Avengers: Infinity War than I did watching Black Panther. But you know what? Avengers: Infinity War was fun not because of its own merits, but because of all those years of MCU productions building up to this. Admit it, how much of Infinity War's story would you have appreciated without having seen any of the previous MCU films? Hadn't it been for the previous films, I don't know how much I would have actually liked Infinity War. Granted, there's millions of MCU fans around the world, but keep in mind that people who vote for the Oscars are not MCU fanboys. They're a fraternity consisting of 8,000 members, comprising of fellow filmmakers. That's filmmakers, not fanboys. As in people who will not blindly like MCU films despite the poor villains, poor special effects, or just badly timed comedy. These Oscar members are not required to watch a long list of films over a decade to understand the story of one blockbuster. They will judge a film based on the film itself. So despite all the commercial success worldwide, and despite a powerhouse like Disney backing the film, Infinity War doesn't have much of a leg to stand on when it comes to being recognized by critical awards that reward films on their own merit. Return of the King may be an exception to that rule, but we can discuss that on another video. Now, Black Panther on the other hand, sure tackles a lot of the obstacles faced by Infinity War when garnering the admiration of critics. Allow me to list some of the qualities of Black Panther that Infinity War doesn't have. 1. Black Panther is its own wholesome story. Despite being the 18th feature film in Marvel Cinematic Universe, the story of Black Panther is pretty self-contained. We didn't have to watch another film to understand the lore of Wakanda. Neither did we have to watch other films to understand character motivations or their arcs. The film starts off with actually explaining the lore of Wakanda to us. We even get a flashback that sets up the conflicting dynamics in the film. Setups that actually get paid off in the same film, not a few films later or the next film, or many films down the line. Not only do we see T'Challa's character arc being completed in the film, but we see the build-up and fall of the main villain. Which takes us to reason number 2, relatable villain. Coogler showed a great appreciation of character development in Fruitvale Station and Creed, and that continued even to Black Panther. Now, both Black Panther and Infinity War had well-developed villains to contrast to, your usual MCU villains. Yet between the two, Michael B. Jordan's Killmonger had a more realistic and identifiable motivation than Thanos. Not only did he have a grounded personal motivation of avenging his father's death, but he also had a political motivation that saw the flaw in Wakanda's isolationist ideology. Now, compared to that, the motivation of Thanos is far grander in scale, but lacks the credibility of Killmonger. With his home planet destroyed due to the lack of resources, he wants to erase half of the universe to conserve what remains of the resources. All the memes created from this motivation signal that for such a developed character, he sure didn't have the most relatable cause for a conquest. When adults discuss Thanos' motivation, even Josh Brolin acknowledges the flaw in the Mad Titan's logic.
He could also use the glove to double the resources.
Yeah, he could, but he didn't think of that at that moment. Because
he rushed to murdering half of all of everything.
Because he's too callous. He did.
Number 3. Black Panther is more reflective of the modern world. Despite taking place in a fictional nation, the politics of Wakanda is relatable to the current state of USA and a lot of places in the West. Just when there's so much discussion about refugees, devaluing of black lives, and border walls in the news, Black Panther reverses the role with T'Challa bringing in a white man into an insecure majority black nation in need of help. The film sure wasn't subtle with its allegories.
Kia thinks we should be doing more.
More like what?
Foreign aid, refugee programs.
You let the refugees in? They bring their problems with them.
So what I'm trying to say is that Black Panther is the one complete film that can stand on its own. As fun as Infinity War was, it was just a fragment in a bigger story that has yet to come to its end game. Now, I'm not saying Black Panther is a perfect film. We all know of its many flaws. But it has a better chance of pleasing non-fanboys than Infinity War. On the other hand, the alternative theory to all this may be, and just maybe, that this film, that got millions around the world flocking to the cinema, that got so widely acclaimed by critics, just happens to be a good film? It's a wild theory, I know, but not impossible. Now, having said all that, let's all admit it, we know it won't win Best Pictures at the Oscars. There are so many better films in the nomination to win that category. But for those of us who like MCU films, superhero films, or any comic book films, we should be proud that the Academy is honoring not just one superhero film to possibly be the best in its category, but 2 films all in the same year. So no matter how we like our comic book superheroes, can we please put our pitchforks aside and root for T'Challa and Miles Morales to make some waves at the Oscars?